Hi everyone, it's Jenny from Art with Jenny K. Today on this video, I'm going to be talking to you about how we can create a growth mindset classroom. This is for any classroom, any discipline, any grade level. Growth mindset is something that spans from toddlers all the way to adults. It even works in the teacher's lounge. Today we're going to focus on three things. First of all, what is a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset? Why is it important that teachers and students have a growth mindset or have a classroom that has a growth mindset mentality? And then third, we're going to talk about things that you can do, actions you can take right now to start your classroom talking about, thinking about, and working toward the natural feeling of being a growth mindset classroom. You may have first heard this term from Carol Dweck in her book, Mindset. She talks about all the research that she's done and the observations and conclusions that she's found. In education, this idea of having a growth mindset has really blown up. Now, is it really a new concept? No, but it's a new buzzword or phrase that we like to use in education. A growth mindset is a mind that believes it can learn and it can grow, as opposed to a fixed mindset that believes I can't learn or I can't grow. I'm fixed the way I am. Now, a lot of times this correlates to talent. Art is a great example because I've seen this 100 times. Usually they correlate drawing. They think, well, I can't draw, I'm no good at art. And they don't realize that drawing is a skill, just like anything else, that can be learned. Carol actually mentions that in her book when she talks about drawing on the right side of the brain. What growth mindset isn't is false praise. It doesn't mean we just tell our students that they're good at everything that they do. It's not about telling them that they'll be the best at everything that they do. It's about telling them that they may not have the answer yet, but if they continue working hard and practicing and learning, they will grow. We don't want to focus on them being better than everyone else. We want to focus on them being better than themselves. We want to encourage them to have growth, to show growth, and we want to encourage them to be open to things that they may not have ever thought that they could learn. A growth mindset is important because it is the true foundation to instill a love of learning and to create lifelong learners. Students must fall in love with the process of learning and of being curious. Then it won't really matter what problems life or school throws at them. They'll be ready with the right mindset. So now let's talk about things that you can do, things you can do right now. But first, it starts with your mindset. If you're going to model for your students having a growth mindset and teach them about it, you yourself need to have a growth mindset. So I really encourage you to read Carol Dweck's book, Mindset. One of the easiest things you can do right away today is change the way you say things to your students. For example, when someone gets frustrated and they say, I can't do it, then simply say to them, you can't do it yet. And encourage them to start using the same terminology with one another. Let's say you've done step one and you've changed the way that you think about learning, and you've set your mind to a growth mindset. And then you've changed the way that you talk to your students, and you've started including the word yet into your sentences to encourage them that while they may not be there at the moment, yet they will get there. The third thing, let's have the students change the way they talk to one another. And I'm sure you'll see that very soon when you start to say, you're just not there, and before you get to it, the kids will finish your sentence and say, we're not there yet. So encourage your students to talk to one another in the same way. When someone's saying, I can't get there, ask the neighbor, what should we say to our neighbor to encourage them to keep trying and to not give up and to have a growth mindset? And then pretty soon, the student next to them will say, well, you're not there yet. And so we want to remind our students that their failure, their inability to do something, is simply learning. That's what learning is. The fourth thing you can do is to change the decor in your classroom and make it child-centered. Have your children make the artwork, the projects, and all the motivational and inspiring posters and ideas that you have hanging around your classroom. If they're involved in this process and the work that they see all around is their work, they'll know that the things you're saying match your actions. So if you say to your children that their ideas matter, and then you put posters on the walls and things that aren't by those children, then in one way or another they get a different message. However, if you say to the children that their ideas matter and their way of solving problems matter, and then you use their work to show and to teach in the classroom, then they'll start to believe that you really mean what you're saying to them. This is a great time where you can do projects that are centered around having a growth mindset. You may or may not know that in my store on Teachers Pay Teachers, I have a collaborative group poster where each student participates in one part of the poster, and then when it's all put together, it's this beautiful, inspirational project with people from our history that have demonstrated a growth mindset. This is a project that I created that other teachers have found useful, but there's lots of ideas, lots of projects, and lots of ways that you can have the students work together to create projects and posters and inspirational quotes and things to display in your classroom that will be visual reminders that their ideas matter, that their thoughts are important, and that the process of learning is more important than any answers that we can get to. The fifth way that you can right now start working on a growth mindset classroom is to involve your students in various procedures and practices, routines that you have in your classroom, maybe even transitions. When something's not working and it's hard, don't feel like you have to solve the problem. How can we make this better? This isn't working quite right for us, and how can we improve? Let them brainstorm, let them solve the problems, and let them feel the success when their idea works. That will then be a motivator for them in the future to make even bigger decisions. So when we can model for them when they're young that when you have an idea and we try it out and it works, then that will give them confidence so that they'll feel like they are in a safe place where they can suggest something that may or may not make the class better, but they know that the teacher wants to hear those ideas. And that will really help foster a classroom that has a growth mindset. The sixth thing that you can do right now in your classroom is start reading books to your children that are about having a growth mindset. Books about solving problems, books about thinking, books about being okay with mistakes. Use those books to teach your children that it's okay to make a mistake, and in fact, mistakes are quite great because they teach us things that we weren't necessarily open to. Beautiful Oops, this one's great for the younger students. It's got a lot of great visuals, and the message is very clear that, oops, we made a mistake. Well, let's turn it into something beautiful. Architect, Rosie Revere the engineer, Ada Twist the scientist. These are all books about people, children, who want to be something. They want to be a scientist or an engineer or an architect. But an adult in their life or situations have made them feel like they can't do it and they want to give up. But then somebody, also usually an adult or something very special happens, and they realize that if they don't give up and they keep trying, that they can be what they want to be. And these are great books, and they have beautiful illustrations. They're great. The other books I love are these. What Do You Do with a Problem? And What Do You Do with an Idea? Both of these are great, but especially this one. What do you do with a problem? And this book talks about how you take a problem and you let it be an opportunity. So Normally a child thinks, well, a problem is a bad thing. But what if you, as the classroom teacher, could inspire your students to be happy when they have problems, to be happy when they make mistakes? Now, at first, they're going to look at you like you're a little crazy, but once they start to realize that from those problems that they had, they learned something that they wouldn't have otherwise learned, then they'll start to realize how important this is. And there's really nothing bigger or better you could give your students than this feeling that they themselves can work through anything. It'll then help the content that you teach. So when you're teaching your students science or math or reading or writing, it won't really matter the content if they come with the right mindset. The seventh thing you can do right now are activities that have students intentionally think about growth mindset. Sometimes having a growth mindset will just be a way that we are in the classroom, things that we say, things that we do. Other times you'll want to intentionally talk to your children and tell them we want to work towards having a growth mindset. Some things you can do. You can have them write a story about a time they almost gave up on something. And then they didn't, they worked through it. How did they work through it? How did they feel when they accomplished what they were trying to do? What would have happened if they had given up? These are great things to do with your students because they're personal. They can remember a time that they were too afraid to join the soccer team because they thought they would never be good. And then they joined anyway, and now their best friends are on the soccer team. Or the child who thought, well, I'm not really a scientist. I like going to art class and I love playing my instrument, but science, no. And then they had that special teacher who showed them how fun science can be and how you can look through a microscope and see an entire new world. And then they realized, well, I don't have to like art and music but not science. I can like both. So when you ask them to write stories from their history, even if they're little, they can still recall things that were hard and stressful for them. Oftentimes, those are the easiest things to recall. Now, if they didn't work through it and they did give up, ask them about that. Let them reflect on what that felt like and maybe how they could have worked to work through it and how they might have felt had they worked through it. So it's really easy to adapt this activity with any age, any children, any discipline, so that they can reflect on their own mind and the process that they work through. Now, they may or may not have a situation at home where they are encouraged to work through things. They may have a situation where when they do something wrong, they're immediately punished, or when they do something wrong, they're immediately told that they're no good. So we want to remember to reward children with our praise for their actions, not for who they are. We want them to know that they're good children inside, no matter whether they do something right or they do something wrong. That the rights and the wrongs are things that we're learning and things that we're growing, and that's the reason we're in school, is to learn. Another activity you can do besides the writing are to find inspirational quotes or coloring pages and have your students color them. When they're reading history books about various people in history, they can read through things that those people said and pull out inspirational quotes. Maybe every day a different child gives an inspirational quote that helps the children remember. Or maybe not at the beginning of the day. Maybe when children come in at the beginning of the day, they're already where they need to be. But maybe by lunch, you start to notice that the kids have sort of gotten to each other and that their peers are starting to influence one another. So maybe you have a recentering time where you then bring out a book or an activity or something. When the tone and the feeling of the classroom is right, then the content is easy to get into the children's heads, and it's easier for us to teach. If we're battling the children with negative thoughts in their minds and negative things that they're saying either to themselves or to one another, then it's a lot harder to get the content to our students that they need. The eighth thing that you can do is to reinforce by using a tone and things that you say over and over again. So earlier we talked about saying yet. When a student says they can't do something, we change what we say and we say yet. So now I'd like to say, as you've been working on this, reinforce this by saying, remember, let's have a growth mindset and work through this. Ask your students to help you and to work together to get that growth mindset. Don't feel like one day you have to stand in front of the class, talk about what a growth mindset is, talk about how it's done, and then that's it. You can revisit this and reinforce this all the time, as often as you feel like you need to, because it will reset the tone and reset the clarity in your classroom so that you can do what you want to do most of all, which is teach the content that you've prepared and created and are interested in your students' learning. And last, I'd like to say that lots of ideas in education will come and they'll go. You may get a new grading system one year to the next, or new computers. Technology will change and evolve. It'll be in vogue to write on a chalkboard, and then it'll be in vogue to write on a computer, and then back again. So we all know, if we've been in education for any time at all, that all of the things that we do will kind of come and go, in and out of vogue, and the pendulum will swing. But one thing we know will never change is that if a child has an open mind to learning, they will learn and they will grow. And not only will they learn and they will grow, but they will take that mindset that they use all day in school, which is where they spend most of their time, and they will apply that to their life as a person of society, as a friend, as a wife or a husband. And that's where I feel like we can have a large impact on our students. If we model for them how we can have this growth mindset, then we can help them in their entire life and throughout their life, not just in the classroom. Although just in the classroom is also very important. Thank you for listening. I hope you have found ideas, tips, tricks, things that you can do right now, or things that you hope to implement later or throughout the year. But don't wait. Don't feel like you have to know anything more than you already know, because you're the expert. You already know what children need.